Palestinian medical staff say dozens of people have been killed and injured in an Israeli strike in northern Gaza. The Israeli military says it is reviewing the attack in Jabaliya, where it believes Hamas militants are regrouping. Yesterday, Qatar, a key player in ceasefire talks up to now, announced it was suspending its mediation efforts between Israel and Hamas.
They were woken by an Israeli strike on this building in Jabaliya. Rescue workers dig by hand to find any survivors beneath the rubble. And what they discover is devastating. What will I do now? This man cries. Many of those in the building when it was hit were from one family.
There were more than 50 people there because their grandchildren, children and daughters, all displaced, were just looking for safety. The house was struck while they were all inside.
But there are some signs of life amid the devastation. The casualties are then taken to hospital, accompanied by relatives. This man calls on God. He says the victims had all gathered for the dawn prayer when they were struck. Israel's military says its operations in Jabaliya and other parts of northern Gaza have been targeting Hamas militants to make sure they don't regroup there. But the relatives of the victims of this strike insist they were innocent.
We were just sitting peacefully. These are innocent citizens who don't belong to any military organization or faction. The eldest man is 70 years old.
Diplomatic efforts aimed at securing a ceasefire deal have suffered a setback, with Qatar suspending its mediation between Israel and Hamas. And that means such scenes are likely to continue in Gaza.
And DW senior international correspondent Fanny Fachar joins us from Jerusalem. Fanny, what's the latest on that strike in Jabaliya?
Yeah, what we're seeing is really the results of yet another devastating attack in northern Gaza, in particular in this historic camp, Jabaliya refugee camp, that exists since 1948 and has been a target of attacks not only in the past year but over many, many years. Now, when it comes to this particular attack, it's unclear just how many people have been killed. Medical sources are speaking of dozens killed, especially children. And while I'm saying this, again and again, Israel reiterated over the course of the past few weeks, since it shifted its focus on northern Gaza and renewed its offensive over northern Gaza, that Jabaliya refugee camp is, according to their information, basically a stronghold of Hamas militants. But if you look at those pictures, if you listen to the relatives of those killed, they say, no, these were not Hamas militants, but very ordinary people. And of course, they're asking themselves the question, just how long, how much more do civilians need to pay this price of being killed in this ongoing Gaza war? Now, as I'm saying this, there have been protests here across Israel demanding a ceasefire because, of course, people, as long as this Gaza war continues, question just how long this bloodshed has to continue. When will the Israeli hostages will be released? And really, when is an end to the suffering? But adding to this devastating news of the attack on Jabaliya refugee camp was another news, and that is that Qatar, a key central mediator, is basically suspending its role, temporarily at least it seems, as a mediator. They say they will return to this role as a mediator when they see any significant and serious progress, both from Hamas militants but also from Israel, to agree on a proposal that then can lead to a ceasefire. But if you listen to what has been said over the course of the past year with regard to any ceasefire negotiations, and there was only, I want to recall, one short ceasefire that was exactly a year ago from now in November that lasted a week, there wasn't any progress so far, simply also because the interests both of Hamas militants and Israel are so diametrically opposed to each other. partner, Hamas, demanding a permanent ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces, while Israel is saying they will keep the control over Gaza. In fact, some are even calling for a resettlement of Gaza Strip. And as a result, really, if it wasn't up in the air already, with Qatar withdrawing from its role, it's even more up in the air when there is a ceasefire that will bring an end to the suffering on all sides.
VW's Fanny Fachar there reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you very much, Fanny.
Deepmala Mala is the Chief Humanitarian Officer for the aid agency CARE International, and she told me about the situation in Gaza.
It's an extreme humanitarian crisis, unimaginable, unbearable, and unlivable. Such is the condition, and especially in the northern part of Gaza, where people are being forced to choose either be displaced along with tens of thousands or be trapped in an active conflict zone. And the risk of death is far too probable in this situation. The infrastructure is completely broken. I'm hearing from our partners that the streets are filled with dead bodies. We are hearing about people being burnt alive, and the news and reportage coming about schools, shelters, hospitals being attacked is far too common. It is beyond human imagination what people are bearing and what people are living through. I'm hearing about injured pregnant women braving the bullets and bombs to reach the few remaining hospitals. I heard from some of the doctors that some injured people who reach the hospital barely survive only a few hours because they're essentially not much medical equipment or help left.
Yeah, aid agencies are also warning of a looming famine. Are your colleagues and partners on the ground able to reach and help people there?
In terms of famine, let's say famine is a technical definition with or without a formal definition of famine. One thing is absolutely true, which is people have been dying of starvation. The whole of Gaza Strip is classified in emergency phase. Now, to your question about are we able to help people? We are severely obstructed, especially since October in the northern part of Gaza. Taking aid there is hugely risky, and at this time where we should be scaling up, we are restricted. Deliberate obstruction of aid is happening. Humanitarians like CARE and several other agencies, we have been reporting about it with specific examples, and we can say with absolute sadness and frustration that aid is not being allowed at the scale, level, and frequency that is urgently needed in Gaza right now.
Israel, though, claims to have expanded access, medical assistance, and coordination with international partners such as CARE in Gaza. So this would be a claim that you cannot corroborate.
This is a time where it is not about claims, it is not about sides, it is not about political situations, it is about bare facts. And the fact is, humanitarian aid is being obstructed. We are not able to reach the scale that is required. There is huge amount of ambiguity and uncertainty about the aid which we can get in. And this has been continuing for several months. And in the last few months, it has become even more challenging for humanitarians operational on the ground.
You say this is not about sides, but I would like to ask who is obstructing this aid from getting to where it's supposed to go?
Well, for us to get aid into Gaza, we need permissions from Israeli authorities, so the obstruction comes from there. And when within Gaza, for us to be able to distribute aid, we are not able to do it because of the military offensives by Israel.
That was Deepmala Mala of CARE International. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.